Well, Kevin, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day. I know you're on the road there working hard. Seems like you got a little bit of time at the end of the day here, a little afternoon off. So I appreciate you hanging out with me and recording this podcast with me. Welcome to the show,
I appreciate you having me, man.
dude. Been following you for a while. I love your content. I love what you're up to, and can't wait to talk about it a little bit. But before we get into that, before we get into the work side of things, let's go way back to where you grew up, where you're from.
Man, I grew up just outside of Houston, Texas. Pretty much lived there my whole childhood, and then kind of bounced around Texas here and there. But that's kind of where I've always been centrally located.
I just went to my first Astros game. What week and a half ago? Man, I was
There you go.
sick. That was
Oh
dope.
yeah,
That was pretty cool.
yeah. Minute Maid Park's pretty cool to go to, man.
I had a blast there. We had some. We were fortunate enough to get some pretty decent seats down there in the Diamond Club, about 7 rows back off the catcher. So it was
Okay.
a good time.
Yeah, those are pretty decent. Also, the best seats in the house. But all right.
Yeah, I was with Robbie Mitchell there too, so
Okay.
it was a good
Okay.
time. You guys have spent some time together, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I like Rob. He's good people.
Yeah, man. So growing up outside of Houston, what was that like?
Other than hot, man, it was good. I raced motocross with the old man for a number of years until kind of grew up and got into bigger toys, as most guys do. Now I started street racing for a while, and then kind of had to make a living, so I went off to work.
Um, how do you get into street racing?
You basically put all kinds of stuff you shouldn't on your car, and then you just find out where everybody's racing at, and you kind of join the crowd pretty much.
Was this was a thing in high school or was this after high school?
It started in high school. We got pretty serious, pretty competitive with it after high school. Me and one of my best friends owned, back then they were web forums before apps and social media and all that stuff came out. So we had one of the bigger street racing web forums in Texas. We would hold an event every year, King of the Streets, where you'd have guys trailer their cars in from Chicago and California and all kinds of random places to come race for some pretty big cash.
Is this like all like um done in the back alleys kind of thing, or is it
Yeah, for
something
sure,
that's, yeah,
for sure.
it's just
It,
all like get together, just straight up Fast and
yeah,
Furious style?
yeah, kind of until those movies kind of came out and ruined a bunch of stuff. But it was all basically industrial parks that had a half-mile stretch where you can go mark out 1320 and just go at it in the back concrete alleyway pretty much.
What did you have for a car? Walk me through your car.
Man, I had a back then, I guess this was 2003, 2004. I had a 96 Mustang. We put a four valve in, had pretty good amount of nitrous, and it weighed absolutely nothing. We gutted it out, put a 6 point cage, and really it was all suspension, but it hooked on the street. So it won a lot of races.
Did you stick with street racing? You said you're into motocross a little bit too. Did you dabble with
No, I
that?
did.
Continue with that?
Yeah, I quit motocross. I'd broken a couple bones and decided I wanted to give something else a try. So I got into cars. And then, man, I hadn't been on a dirt bike in, it's been 20 years now, I guess. I just kind of quit it cold turkey. Never really looked back. Found something else I wanted to do, and I did it.
I had the same similar experience. I didn't get into racing motocross, but my brother and I every day of our lives, from when as soon as we could ride, like 6, 7, 8 years old, right to the time. I think I think I sold my dirt bike to buy a pickup truck, my first pickup truck, and I didn't own another dirt bike after that for
Very similar.
15 years or something like that. And then even when I did, I bought it off a friend and it was a 450 and it was just too big for me. My legs are too freaking short and I kept falling and trying to ride it in the bush. I kept falling over and it's horrible. So I got rid of it again. But,
I'm telling you, man, you get older, stuff starts hurting a lot
oh
worse.
dude, every time I fall, I did this a couple years ago. I like mountain biking as well, like downhill mountain biking, and it went to Whistler. And anyone who doesn't know where Whistler is, big ski resort mountain. They got some pretty sick runs, And Whistler's this place, like, chairlift to the top of the mountain and just pick whatever sick rides you want or
Oh yeah.
runs you want down. But everything's huge, like everything's huge and everybody's going big. And so you progress really fast just because you have to. A lot of stuff you can't even just ride over, you have to jump it.
Mm.
And just doing good. I made it all day until the last run. My arms were bagged out. I shouldn't have gone up for the last run. And I just went off this double and just went straight over. And I just kept going and just lawn dart, separated my shoulder, had blood all over my face. I just remember laying on the ground, just so sore and looking up, and this freaking 9-year-old kid just launches and he does this little whip and he just looks at me and I seen his eyes just like widen, like, holy shit. And then just lands and goes. And I'm like, you asshole, you're
Oh yeah.
so good. You're only 9.
Yeah, and he didn't even think twice about it.
Oh no. His dad stopped and so like, are you okay? Are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I don't know how I'm going to get down. But yeah, it's horrible.
The dad got it. The kid didn't.
Yeah.
The dad's been on the dirt before. Trust me.
Hell yeah. What other sports are you into? Into any sports growing up?
Man, that's really about it.
Yeah.
I always had a fascination with how things worked and motors and turning wrenches. So that's kind of been what I've done since growing up.
What did mom and dad do?
Dad was in sales, also rode motocross before I did. And then mom's been pretty much a housewife as long as I've been around, I guess. She was in the metal business doing office work.
Did you guys live near the city or like in the country? Did you have your own track or did you have to go to tracks?
No, we were in a, like a little subdivided neighborhood, probably about 30 minutes outside of the city. But there was, back in the day, I guess there's probably 7 or 8 tracks in Houston. So you had your choice of where you wanted to ride.
It's always been so weird for me because like spending some time in Texas now over the last couple of years versus British Columbia, Canada, where I'm from, like 99% of Texas is owned by people. And I would say 99% of British Columbia is owned by the government. So
yeah, free land out there to ride on, just wherever you want. It's kind of impossible to find.
We had 5 acres, but it was just back roads as far as you wanted to go. Then you just hit a cow trail in the bush and you'd be gone all day, come back for a sandwich in the afternoon and then just take off again. It's crazy because mom, like, no cell phones, nothing. Mom never knew where we were. She said like we just point in a direction, like we're heading that way, going to the gravel pit or going, but she never knew. We were gone. Would have taken a helicopter to find us.
It's funny how society's changed, man. Now you can't go anywhere or do anything without having everybody know it.
It's wild. I was letting my phone download into new iOS 15 today. So I left at home. We took our dog. We got a new puppy. Took the puppy for a walk and stopped at a chopped leaf for a wrap on the way home. So sitting there waiting for my wraps to be made and just like kept like almost felt weird. I didn't have my phone with me. And it was like the first time the phone's been away from my right hand for like the longest time. Right.
I'm telling you, man, it's anxiety. It's anxiety.
I was thinking back to when I was a kid. It's like wondering what the fuck I did. I'm like, oh, this is what it was like.
Man, we rode bicycles. We made jumps in backyards. We broke bones.
Yes. Did all of that.
It's crazy to think that there was a generation before you see now that wasn't attached at the hip to technology and social media and all these things. I mean, they're great things. I'm glad we have them. They've really advanced the way that people connect with each other. But at the same time, my social media back in the day was me throwing a rock at my buddy's front door to come outside because we're about to start playing baseball. I mean, it's just changed drastically.
Dude, we only had one set of neighbors and they lived at the top of the hill and we lived at the bottom. And it was always like you'd call them up and you'd be like, oh, come down to our house and play. They're like, no, we don't want to come down the hill because then we got to go back up the hill. They're like, come up here. And we're like, well, we don't want to go up the hill. So when we got dirt bikes, it was the coolest thing. We'd have like 4 people on this dirt bike shuttling people home. Like it was wicked. Dirt bikes were there. This is
taxi, man.
Dude, like this is something that I think it helped make good tradesmen. Like the tradesmen that I grew up with and I worked with, did my apprenticeship with. Like this was it. There was no phones, there was no cell phones, there was no social media, there was nothing. Like that's what I did as a kid. I lived outside. Mom would kick us out the house in the morning, especially all summer long. She'd kick us out in the morning, and we weren't even allowed to come in the house until we were allowed to come back for lunch and grab some lunch and a freaking chocolate chip cookie or something and take off again.
For
Um,
sure.
but we were gone outside, and the skills we learned by doing that translate to the trades. Like I'm working with younger men and women now, just getting into the trade, and it just seems different for good reason. And it makes me kind of worry about the direction. I don't know. It's like it takes a little bit more work to get them to this point, right?
Oh,
Because
I'm
they just don't
telling you,
have
man,
these
if
experiences.
right, if you want to fool the entire class next time you go to the climbing circle or whatever, before everybody straps up with their tools, go put a bicycle upside down and take the chain off and tell them to fix it.
Yeah.
See how many can do it.
Yeah.
You were 5-6 blocks away from home and that happened. You had to be able to fix it to get home.
Right.
It wasn't just an exercise. It was like, damn, I'm not gonna walk my bike all the way home. I gotta fix it.
These guys are asking, maybe not at this point where they're in class already, but all these DMs I get on social media all the time and all the questions I get from kids, like how to get into this trade. What do I got to do to get into this trade? If the first thing you say is, you got to get your CDL, they're like, what's a CDL? What do you mean? Like your commercial driver's license. Like, I don't know how to drive standard. I don't know how to never operated a clutch before even, or you get the concept of a clutch, never mind driving a big rig. And I just worry about that. Like we were using machines with clutches when we were 7 years old.
Oh, for sure. Like there wasn't an automatic back then. They didn't have,
No.
the big trucks were all, either 10 or 18 or whatever you might have sitting in there, but it was all manual gearbox stuff.
My first
My first day in one was, hey, drive it over the Bay Bridge at Houston and hope you get to the other side. It's like, here we go.
as if that's not stressful. Hey.
I mean, what's the worst that could happen? You roll backwards down a 2-lane bridge.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to go good, but
I always used to hate it when somebody would creep up behind you. You'd be in the first line truck I had to drive, and the bucket was a split rear end. Like the differential was split. The gears were split back there. So, you had your regular gears and then your half gears were split in the rear end, not in the transmission.
mm-hmm.
So you had this like little button, and then you had to time everything perfect. Like the wheels had to be turning at the right speed of the drive
you had to
shaft,
be at the right RPM, just
or else it would
sure.
you just hear this tick, 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 tick. And if your head heard that, and then they all of a sudden matched up, they would slam in, but then you could spin your axle right off too. So it was just a stress. I was a stress case the whole time. When did you find out? When did you find?
But it made you a better driver, and you learned about it. So,
Oh, it did. Oh, yeah. No, I was a basket case all the time, but it didn't take long to figure it out. And it did make me a better driver, 100%.
there you go.
When did you find Linework, and how did you find the trade? If you had nobody, did you have family in it or something like that, or friends?
No, man, I had a couple acquaintances through my wife, and I was in the oil field working in South Texas. And I still remember this to this day. I was driving back from the rig to Houston, and on that part of 59, there's an old wood frame, H frame line that just runs the entire highway, like as far as you can see. And every now and then, I mean, I paid no attention to it. I knew nothing about it. But then there's one day I saw a crew of guys, and it was probably 5 frames down, where they had a guy on the static on every one of them. And I was like, dude, that's cool as shit. Like, I climb on the oil rig. I could do that. That looks cool. And we had got back to Houston, whatever, and we're hanging out with a buddy of mine who happened to work for the utility in town. He's like, yeah, man, they're hiring groundmen. You ought to apply. It's not too much different than what you're doing now, and you'd be in town. It's like, yeah, okay, I'll apply. No big deal. And I did, and I ended up getting a call and talked with one of the supervisors and went down for a formal interview, and it just kind of steamrolled from there. Like I was green as green could be in the utility side or in the line trade side. I didn't do nothing about it. So it's kind of cool learning basically from the ground up from everybody around me.
From that perspective, if you can remember, um, what's some advice that you could give to young guys wanting to get into the trade and wanting to do the same thing, like they've just found it, and how do they go about doing that? Like what's like when you're going through that interview process, what do you think it is from your perspective that they were looking for and that they were attracted to?
Man, to be honest, I think it really comes down to just telling yourself that you can do the fucking work. Like you can do it. It's not that tough. It's a different trade, but it's not going to be any more or less work than you're used to. If you're already a tradesman and you're already, working on oil rigs, working in the refineries, if you're on a pipeline doing fitting or welding or whatever, the trade is different. The work is different, but the basic mindset is the same. Go out there, learn your craft, do good at your craft, master your craft. That's all there is to it. And in every trade, that's what you chase. You chase mastering your craft.
What is it about this trade that you think you should pay attention to when it comes to the craft? Um, I see. I just got asked this question yesterday. I did a small interview for Tallman Equipment's does blog posts on their website. So they were asking me some questions, and they were asking me, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something to do with, what do you think makes, like, we talk about being a craftsman all the time, and they're asking, like, what do you think that means with regards to this trade, like being a true craftsman? Can you speak to that a little bit with regards to line work?
Man, I think, and I would say to be a true craftsman in this trade, you have to be able to put up some work that is going to stand the test of time. It's going to have the quality to be quality line work. You're not just putting a Band-Aid on something to where somebody 5 years from now is going to have to come fix it because it's broke or it fucked up. I mean, be proud of what you put in the air. You're going to drive by it. Your friends are going to drive by it. Anybody in the trades can look up at a pole, because we do it every day, right? Driving down the road, you see a pole with a bank on it. You're like, God, those jumpers look like shit. And you judge somebody else's work without even knowing it. So, I mean, when we're working, before we even leave, we'll look up, we'll talk shit about it, and we'll make sure that, we're proud to put our name on that. Going down the road, you're going to see it 10 years from now, and it's still going to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's in those details. Like, that's what's so cool about it. It's in the details that you may not even ever see, or the normal person may not ever see. Like if you opened up an iPhone, the inside looks just as fantastic as the outside. It's something I'll never see, but the person putting it together, people designing it, designed it that way. They're craftsmen with it. It's the same thing with like old school swordsmen, like making, like ironworkers making swords, taking the time with the details. Like, you'll never see how sharp that edge is until you use it. But I think that we should do the same. We should do the same thing. We should apply. It sounds silly, and I know that I get laughed at sometimes by saying this stuff with regards to line work, but I think it's really how we do preserve this job as a trade. It is a craft. It is a trade. We worked hard to get it classified as a trade. There's a lot of places, a lot of states that don't even recognize line work as a trade, even. So this is the way we do it, by doing a good job.
Yeah, I feel like, and if you do a good job, if you do the quality work that you can do and you should do, to me, going further down the line, that's going to be one more safe job site that somebody else is going to pull up on and not have the hazard.
Mm-hmm.
If you just half-ass throw something together, somebody comes to fix it, they don't know what they're walking into. Yeah. I mean, if you don't have everything pinned right, or if you got stuff that's just half-ass in the air, a slight breeze could take it down. The next guy that's up that pole, shaking that pole around, bust something loose while he's on it. It's just another hazard that doesn't have to be there. You're almost setting a trap for the next guy.
Yeah, that's a really good point. There was a friend of mine was climbing a pole, and I got to the secondary level. It was a brand new pole too, so he was in his mind thinking, I'm pretty good climbing this pole. Everything's neat and tidy. But what the people that replaced it just before him, like they must have been there within the last month to replace this pole, and he was on it for some issue they had to go fix. But he got up to the secondary level and he just went to pass his belt around, moved his hands around the backside, and two connectors weren't taped or taped enough, smashed when he was bouncing around with his hands, flashed over, completely burnt one hand, and just like something completely senseless. That's somebody not taking pride in what they're doing, not taking their time, they're rushing, whatever the excuse was. But that's a classic example of somebody not being a true tradesman or a craftsman and taking their time with something and setting somebody else up for failure.
For sure. Yeah, we sat down. We actually had this talk on the crew the other day, just talking about the difference in some of the younger generation that looks at it as a job, and some of the younger generation that looks at it as a trade, a career. Like this is going to be their way of life. And you'll always have people that are very gung ho in it for good reason. It's a very respected craft to be able to hone and to be able to be a part of, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, man. What was apprenticeship like for you?
It was good. I actually did my apprenticeship with the utility down in Houston. It was all on the job. Uh, it was a mix between everything. We did the high line, we did the underground, we did the distro. Um, I I fell in love with the transmission side of it, so I stick more of on that side than any of them, and that's still to this day what I prefer, just because it's bigger, heavier, kind of more technical thinking with the rigging.
Yeah, I've been just dealing with the students. It's kind of interesting seeing. Um, you can almost pick out who's geared more for what. I've talked to guys that are way more geared for underground, and it's like great. That's just they're a little more technical and just like to tinker and like to do neat tidy work and just be down low and do that sort of stuff. And it's like you can almost see that right away in what they do. And then you can see these people who gravitate more towards transmission. It's like right away, it's like I want to be up there on that tower. That's where I want to be, and everything in between. And it's actually kind of cool to see right from the start. You can see it right from the start what direction most of these guys are going to want to veer towards.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. You showed people the helicopter videos and the long line and all that. Their first reaction is either, "Oh, that's crazy. There's no way in hell," or "How can I do that?"
Yeah.
I mean, you get to being in the trade, you do it long enough. It's literally just another ride to a job. But to the kid that's just starting out, you'll never convince him of that. He thinks it's the craziest thing he's seen in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Until he's doing it every day, all summer long. um, so talk about that a little bit. Talk about where have you been, and you've been traveling a little bit. I obviously follow you on Instagram for the last couple of years, and you see you kind of all over the place from California to who knows where. Talk a
Yeah,
bit about some of the jobs that you've been on and what you've been up to.
man, I don't know. I just in 20, I guess late 2018, early 2019, I was like, well, I've been here for 10 years, and the writing on the wall was you're kind of where you're at the utility. And to me, that wasn't enough. I wanted to see more. I wanted to do more. I wanted to put, more certifications and everything under my belt. So that's what I did. I went out chasing belt buckles and paper for 2 years. I went everywhere from far west as California to the middle of nowhere in Kansas, barehanding 345. Ended up in, I guess it was Indian Nation, somewhere in New Mexico, like on Indian reservations, doing another 345 barehand job. And I've been back and forth. I've done a little bit in Houston at home, just staying at home at night. And then I've also been out west and worked a lot of the PG&E land area.
So talk about how you can do that. Just because I've been answering lots of questions recently again with the students. So I've been trying to pay attention to, that's the majority of the questions I get online or from younger people that are just getting in, right? And they got all these questions about how this works. So talk about how that works, like how you're able to do that, just work around the country.
I mean, man, and And one short answer, IBEW. You go union and
Yeah.
you can take that ticket wherever you want. It's it's not a guaranteed job, but there's work everywhere. You can, if you don't like, if you don't like the conditions you're working in, or you feel like you want to see a different sunrise, hook the trailer up and go.
Yeah. So explain how that works, just because they were asking me this question just the other day as well. It was like, um, well, how does, like, what union, non-union, like they really just don't even know. They just heard a little bit about either one. And I went into this big long spiel about, I'm not trying to pick sides or anything. I got to keep very
Right.
neutral with them,
Yeah.
like even though I've had my own experiences and I am an IBW due paying member, but plain simple gave it to them that way. Like it's because of the IBW. It's because of
Absolutely.
locals, all over the place. And you can just kind of pick up from one and just move to another and put your name on a book system there and get pulled off for another company and go to work kind of wherever you'd like.
Absolutely. And that's kind of what I've been doing. You go to pick somewhere you want to go, or, if you hear of a job coming up that you think you'd like, call the hall, see what kind of information you can get on it, go get on the books. I mean, in some areas, like if you go out west of California, it's gonna be daunting. The books are gonna say they got 100 people on them. Shoot, that 100 people might be a day and a half worth of waiting. I mean, it goes a lot quicker than you think when the books are flying. But I mean, it's really just about what you want to do. I mean, I've been in the union versus non-union fight with, not fight, but discussion with a couple different people. And at the end of the day, I believe the union choice was the choice for my family.
Yeah.
So that's the way I went. And, I travel for work. I can go home and work. We got a good union back home as well. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. For the time being, we're kind of out and about, having fun with things and kind of setting up the later part of life.
But that's the really one of the unique things about the job and about the trade is that you can have the freedom to do that by being a part of the IBW, and being that holding that journeyman lineman ticket. And if you want to become bare hand certified and try some bare hand work in California, New Mexico, Southern Texas, wherever it is, Kansas, wherever it's happening, you can find that work, you can source it out, you can find the companies that are doing it, make your relationships network a bit, and then, show up at the local hall and, you know,
That's it.
get pulled off and go to work there. And you can really build your skills, and you can build them quick if you'd like. You could take a whole career to build them by staying local and just, plugging away. And when your company gets that kind of work, if they do that kind of work, do what you can there, or you can decide to pack up and go if you want to build your skills or build your bank account or whatever that is. And that is one of the really special things about the job.
You definitely have the opportunity to chase things. If you stay at your home local for your entire career, there's nothing wrong with that. There's tons of people that do it and they make a good living doing it. But I mean, for my local at least, we don't do a lot of barehanding. Don't do much helicopter work. Those are two of the things that I put on my bucket list that, they're part of this trade. They're part of what I want to do. I'm going to go find them. And that's pretty much what I did.
And it's by saying yes, right? It's by saying yes, and it's by seeking that stuff out and going and doing it. That's the other
That's it.
aspect of it, right? That people it daunts them. Like, well, how do I do that? I got a concert to go to on the weekend. I don't want to go do that, right? So
Yeah.
you gotta make some sacrifices and give some things up, right? I get that question a lot as well. Like, well, I got a new wife and kid, and I just need to stay home. And I'm like, fine, that you can do that, but you might not be able to be bare hand certified and go do that transmission work you want to tick off your list. Like, you might just have to, but you can do it. You can still do it. You can stay home. You can try to get a job close to home, and you probably will, but you might just be having to do that underground work that maybe you don't like as much, or that distro work that you maybe don't like as much. So it's give and takes, but you got to be willing to do that.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said all you got to do is say yes. I mean, opportunities are going to be endless once you start this career. You'll get asked if you want to do this, if you want to do that. If it's something you want to do, just say yes.
Yeah.
You're going to lose a couple weeks to train and to do this and to do something that you've wanted to do for the past 10 years of your life. Small sacrifice to make.
So there's like some of the some of the darker side of the trade that I don't think gets brought out and made aware of um, so much is like, so you got a wife and kids and a kid, right? A
For sure.
boy, right?
For sure.
Son. Something you guys made the decision together, obviously, to for you to go and do this work. It's, you know, stuff that you wanted to do and you wanted to do in your career, but you got a family and you got to make the decision together, and you make the decision together. But it's difficult. And so what are some things like, what are some ways, uh, I guess, like, it's a tough decision to make as so my scenario was, I did that. I went away, I came back, and it was like we were different. So what are some ways that you guys make sure that you're staying on the same page, with you being away so much, like family wise? What are some things you do together when you're home or stuff like that, I guess?
And I mean, obviously, number one is communication. That
Mm.
kind of that sets the tone for everything. You got to be able to communicate with your wife or whoever you have at home. And then when you get home, you might only get 5 days at a time. But when you're home, you're off. So you're literally just you're blowing and going the whole time. But the quality time to me is what kind of keeps everything glued together. You make the best of your days at home. And again, with technology being what it is now, you can FaceTime anywhere at any time. So me and my little boy, we have FaceTime every day. I see him every day and tells me about his day at school and all kinds of other random stuff that 5-year-olds talk about, which is awesome. But it's you got to make sacrifices, right? This isn't a forever deal. I'm not on the road, not going to be on the road forever. We've got a set goal in mind. When we reach that goal, we'll go for the next goal. And it might be coming home for a while and working local for a couple of years and going back out on the road. There's no, I don't know, there's no real set formula on how to make it work or make the best of it. You just make sure you have somebody that can handle the home front while you're working, and make sure y'all are on the same page with everything.
I keep telling these guys that, don't come into the trade thinking that you're going to change it. It does not change for you. You change for it. And regardless, if you're at home or if you're on the road, there's still things that this trade has that other careers and jobs don't, and that is that it's really rare to set schedules, even at home work. If you're working for a local district or co-op or whatever, even working a set schedule, they might have times that you go in and times that you get to leave a normal day, but very rarely do you ever stick to that? You're getting called out in the middle of the night. You're getting, there's a
Oh
storm,
yeah.
there's a hurricane, there's a whatever excuse it is, um, to make sure that you're open up front with your significant others and your family, prior to even getting in the trade. Just don't try to fake it. Don't try to tell them that, no, it'll be all right, we'll be able to make it work. It's just, they have to expect, like, there was times where my ex-wife would have, she'd have a whole, like, my kids would have their friends and their friends' parents, and my ex would have a whole relationship built with my kids' friends' parents, right? And I hadn't even met them. Like, I'd meet them a year later, and they've had
Right.
hours together, like meeting, having dinners and all kinds of stuff. And I was never around at the same time. And they're like, "Oh, your husband does exist," or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've had to carve up a Christmas dinner only to put it in a to-go plate and go to work at 6 o'clock on Christmas Eve. Especially when it comes to storms and stuff, when you get storms that are on your home property. Hurricane Harvey was one of the bigger ones for us. The whole neighborhood's trying to band together and make sure everybody's, safe. And my apprentice drove to my house because he couldn't make it to work. My neighborhood was one of the higher ones. So we hopped in my truck and we drove through 4.5, 5 foot tall floodwaters. You know, I think we were more having fun than anything, but we were heading to work, and we stayed there for 19, 20 days. think a lot of us were sleeping on the back of like a 53-foot float with a sleeping bag or a cot or something. It there's no, I mean, there is such thing as a 40-hour work week in this trade. I've seen it once or twice, I guess, at the utility, but once you come to the contract side, I mean, cars hit poles every day. Chances are you're gonna catch those, and they're never gonna be at a good time. They're never gonna be at 9:30 in the morning when it's nice and sunny. It's gonna be 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 blocks down from a bar or something. I mean, it's gonna be in the middle of nowhere, and you're gonna get woke up, and that's kind of the nature of the beast. It's not a trade where it's a punch in, punch out type deal.
What are some things that you do to handle working on the road yourself and not get caught up in things that you can get caught up in being on the road? I see it with some people who get caught up in hanging out at the restaurant and hanging out, goes from there to the bar. It's just every day, always the same. And it just leads to no good.
It does. I really think it comes down to managing your time. If you can manage your time and hey, I'm at work till 4 or 5 o'clock. Okay, cool. There's a gym on the way home. That'll run me to 6:37. Come home. You got time to grab a shower, grab a meal, sit down in your recliner and watch about 30 minutes of TV. By that time, it's time to start over and do it again the next day.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way I've been looking at it for the last 2 years. I mean, I'm out here for a reason. I'm not out here to search out every Applebee's on every corner and see how cold their Coors Light is. It's terrible anyway. I'm out here for a reason, to make money for my family and to knock our goals off of our vision board and our list one at a time. So you kind of got to stick with them.
Yeah. Another great thing about this trade is the ability to knock off those goals as a family, that ability to, like, it should not be the reason why you get into the trade. Money should not be the reason you get into the trade, but it is a very awesome benefit of doing what you're doing in the trade, being on the road, working those jobs away. The bankroll can add up quick, and you can really tackle those life goals that you want to tackle as a family and make some good headway if you do like you're doing. And if like you're saying you do, like you make those goals, you stay out of the trouble, you stay out of the bar, you don't, piss away your money on drinking and drugs and all that shit while you're on the road, and you end up with nothing left at the end of the day. But you tackle those things like your mortgage and, your property
Absolutely.
and your vehicles and whatever else you got, and your retirement and vacations. And it seems like you have got a good handle on that.
Yeah, I've seen and met plenty of people that have gone to work away from home and think that they're just, they're gonna be rich, all this per diem, all this and that, and then they leave that job 6 months later wearing the same clothes, same boots, with probably a little bit less money in their pocket.
Yeah.
And it's just that comes. Hey, if that's how they want to live life, then great for them. I'm glad they're enjoying it. I'm glad they're having a good time. For me, I just I live a little different than that.
So it's good to set a goal. I've talked about this on some of my earlier podcasts, but got away from talking about it for a little bit. But set goals. It's important to set goals for yourself. Like, actually
Sure.
take it and write it down. Don't just think it in your head, but take it and write the goal down, and then write down steps you can do to work towards that goal. And once you do that, you've now created a plan, and then you just have to take action on your plan, and boom, you've executed on your goal. And constantly ask yourself the question, does this fit my goals?
It really is easier than everybody makes it out to be. Just terribly hard. Tell them, hey, I'm gonna go out of town. I want to work. I'm gonna pay off my truck, pay off the wife's car, pay off a pool, pay off whatever. Like, oh man, that's a lot of money. Well, I mean, yeah, it is. But if you don't go out there and spend all your money on stupid stuff every weekend, or go out and buy a brand new truck every 6 months, it's not that hard.
Yeah. How else do you juggle family? What do you like to do with your kiddo when you get home? What does he like to do with you?
And we're big into the mud parks down there. I had a Polaris that was ridiculously big, and I sold that, and we just bought a Ranger for the family. So we go down there. It's right on the side of the San Jacinto River, so we can always just dip off into the river, cool off, and keep riding. It's fun. But
That's
other than
awesome.
that, like we'll ride bicycles, we'll do this, that, and the other. But man, really just hanging out at the house when I get there. It's rare that I go far from my house when I'm on days off.
Hmm.
I'll sit in the back patio, sit in the pool, drink a beer. That's kind of where you'll find me.
Um, it's Texas is a good place to have a pool. God damn, it's hot there. Fuck.
I told myself, man, it was funny. I told myself this was 2 years ago that I'll never work another summer in Texas. And the next job I picked was a bare hand job in Laredo, Texas. I was like, if now I'm just being stupid. This is the worst. This is worse than Houston. And I decided I'm gonna do this in the middle of the summer in cartel land. It was awesome.
They say they told me eh, when I joined QES or Quanta, they said, "Don't worry, we shut the lazy queue down in the summer because it just gets too hot." And this is in Lagrange, just outside of Austin. And for anyone who doesn't know where it is, and um, it's a big power line training facility that Quanta owns in Texas, and sure shit, we get this deal. We had to train some people through the summer this year, basically, and they ran courses all through the summer.
Mm,
And this wasn't even a really hot summer, apparently,
no,
but it was still like, damn. And I like the heat because I'm Canadian and I'm sick of working in the cold. I worked in -40 in northern Alberta for too many times and froze my ass off. So I like the heat. I was supposed to be born in the tropics, but that is a different kind of heat, man. Wow, humid
it's a
too.
yeah, it's a man. I don't have words for it. It's a muggy heat. It's more of a steam bath than anything. You gotta that's those kind of days in the summer where you carry three different shirts with you, and by the end of the day, all three of them are hanging off the back of the crummy drying on the way in. It's ungodly hot from time to time.
Yeah, buddy. Um, right before we started this, we talked about numbers of trade workers, and this is something they actually asked me this question yesterday too. Just trying to drum up interest in the trades versus going to school, and it's like going to school mean going to college or going to university. And I don't want to knock college and university because there's things that you got to go to college and university for. There's skills that we need, like healthcare workers and lawyers, and that sort of stuff that it takes going to college. It just does, and we need those
For
people.
sure.
But there's a large portion of people that just don't know what the fuck they want to do in life, and they're force fed from their parents that you got to get this, you got to get an education, you got to get an education. And trades seems to be something that they skip right over, don't even consider, don't even know about. Just talk about that a little bit.
Man, I think it definitely starts young, because like you're saying, that's drilled into your head. You got to go to college, you got to get an education, you got to do something after you're out of high school. But very rarely is it go find a job, go learn a trade, go to a technical school for 2 years to learn a trade. I mean, there's so many different options just that aren't brought up. It's not even a thought. All your teachers, and it's nothing against teachers. I think that's just how the school system is set up. Is their next step is college. If you look at even just high schools now, some of the ones that I've seen, they don't even have the same trade classes that we had when we were in high school. You had welding, you had shop, you had wood shop, you had the entry level CAD drawing stuff, things for all these different trade related fields, trade related skills. And now, I mean, they're non-existent, and I see in a lot of the line schools now up and coming to teach the trade. That's a really cool aspect of it that, we didn't have 10 years, 12 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cool to see that, because it kind of gives you a little bit of hands-on before you actually go into the field, so you're not just walking in there blind like we all did.
Yeah.
And, getting smacked around for the first 6 months. You actually have a little bit of knowledge in there. But I feel like, I don't know, I mean, even I'm proud of, I got a cousin who's in Ontario, and he messaged me a couple weeks ago, and he's actually going to a local community college that has a line school or a line trade class that he's entered into. So he's super pumped about that, just from knowing what little he does about it from me and from whatever he's seen. It's cool knowing that somebody else in the family is going down that route as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm proud of him for that. And it's, it's cool that it's at a local community college. So they get it. They understand that trades are important. They have a little bit of a curriculum set up for that sort of thing. And it's not just pushing out 4-year degrees that aren't going to do anything. You go get a 4-year degree for underwater basket weaving. You're not going to do anything with that. You just paid $80,000 in 4 years to party 3 days a week.
Yeah.
I went to college for 3 days, and it just wasn't for me. It was a A&M game on the weekend, so I didn't really get much out of it, but it just wasn't, the college atmosphere, I just couldn't get into.
I think you nailed it. Especially if you don't have a focus and a direction, like going into it. If it's just like, I'm going to go here to get some education, like you're going to miss the mark. Like if you make it through with something actually significant that turns into a career and a job, like good for you. I don't know how you did that, but for the most part, you're not going to. You're going to come out just pissing away your $80,000 or whatever it costs you to get through it, and no real job in the end. Go to a college campus,
go to a college campus and just randomly survey people. Ask them, hey, what's your degree in? There'll be there's a million of them. I can't go through all the ones that are, and I don't want to call them bullshit degrees, but they're because somebody told them they had to go to college.
Yeah.
And maybe some people are passionate about that kind of stuff. And that's, hey, more power to you. Like you said, we need those people too. But for all the kids that, it seems like now there's a big craze that is glorifying blue collar work. Maybe that'll turn into something, maybe that'll turn into a bunch of kids saying, oh man, yeah, they're doing it and they make pretty decent money doing it. I wouldn't mind seeing what it's about. But like you hit on earlier, you don't get into the trade for the money. You get into the trade because it's something you're truly interested in. You find very, I don't even know what you call it, niche, I guess. It's something that's right up your alley, which is kind of where I got into it at.
I like how you're talking about the line schools. It's been a super controversial thing. Whenever I speak about it on social media, of course it's social media, so you got to take it with a grain of salt. There's all kinds out there. But one of the things that's bothered me about some of the comments I read, because I like to read the comments just to get a feel for, what guys are saying and what I can like maybe contribute to the conversation. But there's a lot of people that are either one side or the other. Like line schools are good, or they're like, it's fucking a waste of money. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of this. It's a waste of that. Just go join the books, get a CDL and go join the book, sign the books and get your education that way. And I'm like, I think you're missing the mark. Like some of these people that are going to line school, they maybe didn't grow up like you and I. They maybe didn't grow up, learning how to operate a clutch at 7 years old, or working with their hands, or being stuck in the bush on a dirt bike. And you got to figure out how to get home. Like those are all things that I did. I drove, my mom let me drive home from school at 14 years old. You can't get away with that now. You probably wouldn't have got away with it back then, but I did. And
we all did.
We all did. And kids now, calling them kids, but the young people now just might not have that experience. So going to line school is going to teach them things like you just said. It's going to give them a good baseline for the trade. And there's nothing wrong with that. And good for them for spending, whatever it is. Maybe you spent 20 grand on it. Big friggin' deal. It's better than blowing $100,000 on an arts degree that you're never going to use, because turns out you're not an artist. You're working with your hands more, like working with your hands and being outside more than you like teaching whatever. Like, I don't know. I think they shouldn't be so hard on the line schools.
I don't know how deep you get into canvassing the comments, but if you look at a lot of the guys that are the first to talk the trash about the line schools, they're going to be your 40-year-olds to 45-year-old guys
100%
who came up getting the shit kicked out of them by their apprentices, by their journeymen. And they're guys that they didn't have an opportunity to go to line school. Back then we didn't have a line school. Yep. You learned through the trade coming up on the job. So the way I look at it is any way that you can get a leg up on the competition, get a leg up on the trade to get in the door, get your foot in, have a piece of paper that says, hey, I've got this. I know a little bit. I still have a hell of a long way to go, but I know a little bit. Mm-hmm. More power to you. What's 20 grand in a career that you're going to be in for 30, 40 years, making 6 digits right out of the gate, pretty much.
Like nothing.
20 grand's nothing.
Nothing.
20 grand's nothing.
Nothing. And it's a great way to get that leg up. It is a great way to, like, no matter what school it is, it's something you didn't know before. There's something there
exactly
that you're learning, and whatever you spent on that, it's going to be valuable. Yeah.
If you look at a 4-year scholarship that costs $100,000, you can hear people paying off student loan or still paying student loans 10 years after they graduate.
Oh yeah.
Like the interest on the student loans and just the sheer amount of money that you had to borrow to go to school to get somebody to say that you're good at looking at rocks or whatever, a line school for 20 grand, that kid gets a job right out of line school, signs the books, gets picked up somewhere. He's got that paid off within a year and still has money to live.
Yeah. Yeah. And is building his credit and is able to buy a home or buy a car or whatever it takes, versus that guy that got out of university and he's $200,000 in debt. And now he's started a family and he's trying to buy a home and buy a car and struggling because he can't even find a job. Yeah. Got laid off due to COVID and all that bullshit.
It's going to be a struggle for him, I promise.
And that's another thing with this job that I've noticed. We haven't skipped a beat. 2 years now, almost. It's been 2 years now, actually, that COVID's been an issue in this world, and linemen, for the most part, haven't skipped a beat. Hasn't really even bothered us. Even crossing borders, I've been going from here to Texas, Canada to Texas for the last year. I have zero issues at the border. I've had zero issues. Like, people beside me, show up at the border guard and, TSA and they hit the border guard, and the guys beside me are getting the riot act read to them. They're getting hauled away for all kinds of testing, or got to go in some COVID hotel or whatever. I skip right on through, dude. Like it's like, hey, Mr. Lucas, yep, no, we see you've been doing this. Yep, you're exempt. Here's your exempt code. Stick to the rules if you could, but have a nice day. And I walk right out the building. I go to hand my piece of paper, and it's like all the people in front of me, like, you're line A, you're line A, you're line A, which is going straight to more COVID testing and more of this and that. And, oh, Mr. Lucas, you're in line B. Walk right out the out the airport doors, straight into the car and go home.
And that is a real weird fact that I guess just because we don't get very political about it, we go out there, we do our work, we go home. Yeah. They've pretty much, like you're saying, I don't know if it's so much have swept us under the rug or whatever, but for some reason, they've left us alone. And, I'm happy to say that. Mm-hmm. Everybody's been kept working and kept employed, which is cool. It hadn't slowed down too much, which is very rare for the time that we're in.
Yeah. I've had you for an hour-ish. A few more questions just to kind of wind her down. What do you think of safety in the trade? And what's your take on, you're a man that travels, you've been around. What have you seen? What do you see creeping in? What do you see moving out from your perspective?
Ooh, man. That's a good one. It depends on where you're at, obviously, but I see, obviously I see the trade getting younger by the day. I feel like the amount of guys that are retiring outweighs the amount of people that are coming in by a pretty heavy hand. And the younger guys are, and I don't want to call it the cowboy culture. I know we've talked about that a lot as well before this. And there is a lot of cowboy culture out there, and it's just kind of getting it done no matter what it takes. And not to say that safety is a second thought, because safety is always kind of at the forefront when you're doing this job. It has to be, or something's going to bite you in the ass. But I feel like the two generations, there's a total disconnect on how stuff should be done. So the way that one generation does it is totally different from the way the older guys do it. And it's not to say that it's any less safe. It's just not how they do it, so they don't understand it. I think it's important to have a pretty good safety team with you working that understands the work, which is something that's cool. I've been around a lot of safety guys that don't know shit at all, and then I've been around a lot of safety guys that have a pretty good bearing on what's going on. They kind of know the work. They don't know everything about the trade, but they know the basics of line work, which helps when it comes to them being on the job. That way they're not asking a million questions. They know ballpark what you're doing. Mm-hmm. But really, I don't know. I feel like as long as if you can go out there and you can do your job safe and the consequences, and again, you being a quanta guy, you understand the terminology, fail safely. If you're going to fail, know how it's going to fail, know what's going to break, know all your weak points, and plan for them. Mm-hmm. That means you switch out some rigging real quick before you go and you start jacking on dead ends, and you go with something a little heavier because it's going to be safer in the long run. Take the extra minute, switch out your rigging. It's not, in the grand scheme of things, 2 minutes is nothing.
Yeah. And it's taking the time, take the guesswork out, and not guess, or try to restrict the amount of times that you need to guess. And you really shouldn't be guessing on anything, because there's ways to figure it out if you take the time to do it. There's formulas to figure out that most guys, and I only know this because I've seen it come through Quanta. Like, we start training these guys on weights and forces training and things like that, and they're just like, "What is this formula? What do you mean? I can figure out line tension?" It's like, yeah, you can figure out line tension. It's relatively easy. It's a simple mathematic formula. You can figure out line tension. You know what you're pulling on that jack, and you know if that jack's rated for it. Like, you can figure out conductor weight. You can figure out guy tension. You can figure everything out. Mm-hmm. Bicycle tension, relatively easy, and take the time to do it. So you know what you got to pick. You don't just go that rig big saying, "Oh, this rig big." Well, yeah, you might rig big, but still might not make the mark. Like, the biggest sling in your bin.
Well, I mean, either that or you're taking 6 tons up on something that could easily be done with a ton and a half, and now you're just wearing yourself out for no reason. So if you can over rig the world, or you can under rig the world. I would rather have a number that I know, okay, cool. Hey, that's going to be 2,300 pounds. No big deal. I can get it with a ton and a half. Yep. Or maybe I want to step up to a 3 ton if it's over 3,000 pounds. I mean, and like you say, it's all about just not basing it on guesswork. Guesswork in the end is going to get somebody hurt. Know what you're working with. It's not that tough.
And the importance of training. There's a lot of companies that they don't want to spend the money on training because they see, if it's a union company, they see the union workforce very transient, and, guys just pick up, leave, go somewhere else in the country, and they may not ever see him again. But chances are you're actually going to see that guy again. You might see him because some of these companies are getting a little bit bigger, and they have business going on both sides of the state or both sides of the country. PAR is a great example of that. There's guys everywhere. Like, so,
oh yeah.
So, like, take the time and invest in training to a point. You can overtrain for sure, but pick the things that you want to train on, and train the guys. You're only improving the entire workforce by doing that. It's only going to make you better as a company. Even if that guy leaves, he's probably going to pass that on to somebody else. Absolutely. That might come back to your company, and you have no idea how much and how important that was. So, training is very important.
I think, line work is a lot smaller world than people give it credit for. You work with one guy that, you end up liking, and y'all click, and he's your bucket buddy for 6 months, and y'all part ways. You go chasing money, he goes back home. Within another year or two, chances are you're going to see him again because you keep up with them. Mm-hmm. They're your brothers. You call them every now and then, see where he's at, see what job he's on, see what they're making. It's just part of the job. But you end up running into the same people, not over and over, but enough that, you get back to working with them, and you see what they've learned in the last year, and they see what you've learned in the last year, and you'll pick a way that works and run with it, Yeah.
That's something that's made line work. I think that's made line work great. That's what's progressed us as a trade, maybe further and faster than some of the other trades out there, is because we are transient. We take what we learned, in one part of the country or in another country for that matter. And like Robbie Mitchell's a classic example of that. I grew up with that guy in central BC, and his father and my father actually owned a power line company together for a while. And, I worked with him for a while up here. And then, a few years later, you met him in South Texas
Yeah,
working on a job, like randomly. And that's one of the great things is you get to take what you've learned in these different places you've gone, take a little bit of it with you everywhere you go, but it all leads back to the same place. It all leads
for
back to the
sure.
trade and the job. And that's what I don't know that some companies recognize that or take the time to recognize it because they're caught up in profits and advancing and.
Well, I mean, but in the same token, if you don't want to train your guys, and that's your excuse, is because they're transient, because you don't know if they're gonna be here 6 months from now. Well, that's fine. If you don't want to train them because they're not going to be here in 6 months, what happens 2 weeks from now when they are on your payroll still,
Mhm.
and somebody gets hurt because you didn't want to train them about a specific hazard that's on y'all's job site or
Yeah,
something like that? I mean, you get into that kind of thing, and I think that everybody should have adequate training for sure. It's a very important part of staying safe on the job is being able to say, yeah, hey, I can recognize all the hazards. Hey, I know my job. I know how to do this specific task, and I know where the weak link is, and
mhm.
we'll protect ourselves from that weak link to where that doesn't cause us to get in a bind.
Roger that. Roger that. Good advice, man. Um, you've started a little side hustle. I noticed the last couple of days.
Yeah,
Talk
we're
about this
working
a
on
little
it, man.
bit.
It hadn't launched yet. Me and actually one of my buddies that I ran into in Kansas, Kyle, we've kind of come back together and getting back into a little bit of the apparel and having fun with just making stickers. And that's one thing linemen are very, man, I don't know. Everybody collects something weird, but it seems like out on the road, linemen collect stickers.
Yeah,
Like I'm on my third or fourth hard hat now, and all my old ones, if I lost it, I mean, it'd be devastating. You keep your old hard hats with all your old slaps and your old stickers on it, and it's just cool. So we started making them, and my Miami Vice sticker was that first one we came up with about pushing keys, and it kind of took off bigger than we thought it was going to. It was funny. So we've Breakover Goods is the company, and like I said, we haven't launched anything yet. It's probably gonna be a couple weeks in the making still, but
for sure.
it's just line related stuff, something fun for linemen. Everybody likes having cool t-shirts and cool stickers, and it's nothing anybody's gonna retire off of, but it's for the linemen by the linemen. So it's kind of cool
Yeah.
seeing it develop. Some of the designs we have, Kyle is that dude is a mastermind on an iPad. I have trouble turning mine on and finding a map on it. Meanwhile, he's over here making these designs that are they just blow my mind. I think we've only got 2 or 3 of them on the website so far, just for people to look at. Yet. Some of the ones behind the scenes right now are they're insane. It's awesome.
Dude, stoked to see it. Like they are great designs from what I've seen so far. I was like, yeah, you guys are nailing it. I was wondering, because that's always been like one of the hardest things is to find somebody to help design what's in your head, right? Um, Especially like if you can find a lineman or somebody in the trade that's also handy with creating art like that, you've got it nailed because getting what's in, that's always been my biggest struggle is getting what's in my head to a designer to put down. It just like, it never works out. And you always get to this point where you're like, all right, I've gone back to you 100 times
Yeah,
to figure this thing out.
yeah, and we've done the same thing. We'll come up with a design. He'll draw it out on paper, and we'll kind of have a little thought process discussion about it. And we've revisited stuff 2 or 3 times now, and every time we revisit it, it comes out better and better.
Mhm.
And that's 100% him. Like I'll throw a slogan out there, and it's like, oh man, I got design for that. Oh man, yeah, I got something for that. And then literally the next day, he's like, hey, you up yet? Because we're on 2 different time zones. So 6 a.m. his time is 4 a.m. my time. And I'm like, no, I'm not. But send me what you have. And when I wake up, I'll look at it. And it starts early. And it's awesome watching it's watching it progress and watching it be created from scratch. To me, that's the fun part.
Yeah.
I had another apparel company a couple of years back, and we were more gym related, and it was cool, but it wasn't something I was around every day. So to me, the excitement of it was totally different.
Yeah.
Like, this is something that you live day in, day out. This is what you're out here doing 365 days a year. And you're working with, a whole yard of people. Like, it just, it's a different feeling, I guess. A lot of the guys in the art, the first time they saw that sticker, they're like, how many of those you have? Where'd you get that from? Can I get a few? So, I mean, I think I've already gone through close to 100 of them, just passing them out to everybody else that likes them,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good for you, man. I think it's going to be successful from what I've seen so far.
I
It's
hope so,
dope.
man.
You just launched the Instagram account, right? So
Correct.
it's
Correct.
Breakover Goods at
It's
Breakover
correct.
Goods. Okay.
Breakover Goods.
And website associated, same thing.
Yep. Breakovergoods.com.
Sweet, man. Well, I hope you're super successful with it. Like you said, it's hard. Like, I know I've been trying to do apparel here, struggled. I just recently moved to like a print on demand company, because I was making everything in my basement myself and shipping and labels, and
it's overwhelming quick.
Dude, it was so much.
Sure.
And so I've been transferring to, and I'm trying to go with top, like, better quality stuff, even from print on demand. Like, you can pick the better stuff too. So trying to go with the better stuff and going with the better stuff, but it's been really nice. Like, just gets ordered straight from your Shopify account, triggers it Printful, and they make it and ship it. But designs are always the hardest things, designs. So if your buddy wants to hire out, I'd be happy to talk to him.
Hey, man, I'll talk to him. You never know. We'll keep it all in the trade around here.
Cool, buddy. Is there anything else that was on your heart to talk about that we maybe skipped over or missed, or anything?
Man, we covered a lot, bro. I think we covered a pretty good amount of material.
Yeah, dude. Well,
the big thing is just trying to get the trade back to where it was, try to get the numbers back up, and it takes time. I think the trade schools are an important thing, and we need to figure out how to get those back on the map.
I think it's super important. They keep saying it's like 5,000 people short a year. I think that's the number, 5,000 to 7,000. They keep saying short every year. It keeps compounding. So yeah, like, the more we can do to promote the trade, and that comes with, I was just talking, forget who I was talking about that with. I think it was Robbie Wiggs on that episode. Maybe even Ben as well, just about our responsibility as linemen. If you're going to put yourself out on social media, you hold a responsibility now. That's just, it goes past your ego and goes past like what you think you're doing. That's cool work. You have a responsibility to show up correctly and appropriately. Like, there's people looking at you. There's young guys, young men and women looking at you, finding this trade for the first time, or studying it, trying to figure out what it's all about because they want to do it. And if you're showing up in the wrong way, if you're being a turd and your safety's not on point, you've got way too much of that cowboy culture, and you're representing more of that sort of thing on social media, it's not the right thing, man. It's not the right thing. You got a responsibility to show up correctly.
Yeah, that's kind of the fine line that you run into with social media. Is, obviously social media is nothing more than, it's just a glimpse in a window of your life. So of course you want the best stuff, the coolest stuff. You don't post the hard times. You don't post the bad days. You post the cool pictures. And we're all guilty of it. I think you just really need to sit back and reflect on what it is you're posting a lot of times. So now I'm a pretty private guy on social media these days, but I still do the same stuff at work every day that I've done for 10 years. I just portray it a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. But you can show the cool stuff. Like, you can show the great work that you do, but just make sure your shit's tight. Like,
oh yeah,
don't, like, that's what these guys, some of the stuff I see, just, it's that you have a responsibility because somebody is watching you, and that somebody is the next generation. And if you're sitting there complaining about the shitheads that you're getting in the trade these days, and that, it's not the same type of person coming in, and where's all the good guys, and they're just getting shitheads now. Well, if you're the guy posting all the shit on social media, you're the one recruiting all the shitheads. So
Yeah.
it's a full circle deal. Like you got no one to blame but yourself. As much as you want to blame somebody else for bringing them on, it's not somebody else. It's, you know, you got a part to play in that. That's all that, yeah.
Yeah. I think you definitely have to, you got to realize who's looking at you. You know, the social media is so big. You know, you got people that look at profiles that they don't know anything about. They're following hashtags. They're
Yeah.
stumbling on your page on the explore tab. And, you know, anybody can watch, anybody can see it, whether it's, you know, a kid that wants to do this, but then he sees how much that you hate everybody coming into the trade. Why is he going to come into it?
Hmm.
You know, all he sees is you're talking shit about all the kids that don't know anything. He doesn't know anything, but he knows he wants to do this trade.
Yeah.
But now you're just sitting there and you're basically just shitting on him. So it's going to discourage him from going further into looking at it, which, you know, isn't necessarily a good thing.
Yeah, buddy. Well, I appreciate your time.
Hey man, I
Thank,
appreciate you having me, bud.
yeah.